Why, hello everybody, it's Emma here, the Bookish Princess. November is upon us, but around here, the Halloween dies hard. Yes, BB-8 still has the witch hat, and I'm wearing a Halloween shirt, but that's okay. Today I'm going to be sharing with you guys all the books I was reading during the spookiest of months. This is going to be my October reading wrap-up. I've got my stack of books right here. Let's do it. So I know I was raving about this book last month, and you know what? I'm going to be raving about it again this month. It was definitely a 2-month book. It's about 500 pages, not counting the notes. There are probably another 50 or so pages of notes. It's definitely the type of book you want to take slowly and kind of let it all sink in. This is Women Who Run with the Wolves, Myths and Stories of the Wild Woman Archetype by Clarissa Pinkola Estes. The wild woman is kind of that instinctual self buried deep within every single woman, and this book just beautifully reaffirms the strength and uniqueness of women. This book is lyrical, it's poetic, it's structured around all these different myths and stories that the author kind of then sits down and picks apart and analyzes. This author just does such a beautiful job of kind of blending her expertise in psychology, so she's got like research and terms to back her up. Then she merges that with this beautiful sort of reverence for the spiritual and this beautiful poetic language. I think she's just, there were so many passages I found myself marking. Here's one I loved. Being with real people who warm us, who endorse and exalt our creativity, is essential to the flow of creative life. Otherwise, we freeze. Nurture is a chorus of voices, both from within and without. I could just tell as I was reading it that this is definitely something I will want to come back to. I can't recommend it enough. So remember a couple months ago when I was like, guys, I want to read Ayn Rand, and I kept putting it off, but I finally got started this month. I actually didn't start with Atlas Shrugged. I started with Anthem. If you're looking to get started with Ayn Rand, but you're a little intimidated by the length of like Atlas Shrugged and The Fountainhead, I would definitely recommend Anthem. It's not even as long as it looks, because most editions, like the second half is like a manuscript where you can kind of see the changes Ayn Rand made, which is so fascinating because the language in Anthem is so spare. Like there is no extra word. It has been like cleaned up, and it was cool in the manuscript. You could see she was just like crossing out word after word after word. I really think that is half the trick behind great writing, is having the power to look at your own sentences and like just be totally ruthless and say, you know what, this doesn't need to be here, this doesn't need to be here. Just cut it down so it's beautifully succinct. Anthem is kind of like a post-apocalyptic, almost like a Hunger Games type scenario where society as we know it has obviously failed in some way. It's a communist society where they've kind of reverted to the dark ages. Everything is very strictly controlled. It's told from one point of view of a man who's kind of rediscovering all the things that have been lost. It's definitely kind of alarming, as most post-apocalyptic tales end up being, but it's very engrossing. It totally pulls you in. I was just so impressed with the writing on that I jumped straight in to Atlas Shrugged, which is, how many pages is this? Let's look. Oh my gosh. Oh, and why did you do this? It's 1,073 pages. So the terrifying thing about starting this book right after reading Anthem is that it feels like, and I don't know at all that this is the case because I haven't finished Atlas Shrugged yet, so I don't know this, but it felt like when I was first starting it, like Anthem was the sequel to this, like, because this is a society that is obviously having a lot of trouble. The main character is Dagny Taggart, and she is the driving force behind Taggart Transcontinental, the biggest railroad company in the United States, and Dagny is just kind of working tooth and nail trying to keep the railroad going, but everything seems to be against her. Increasingly, the people who are getting power in this society and in this government are like the people who are preaching this creed of like one for all, brotherhood, like kind of take from the rich to give to the poor, like the wealth should be shared to everyone, but it's totally impractical, and really they're just kind of grabbing at wealth themselves, and they're making it impossible for movers and shakers like Dagny to actually get anything done. Definitely this like tension and this suspense. You wouldn't think she could keep up the suspense through this many hundreds of pages. I ended up getting through it a lot faster than I would have thought, just because you want to keep going. You want to find out what happens. If you're planning on reading this yourself, I do not want to give you any spoilers. So this is your warning right now. You should skip ahead until I'm not holding up the Atlas Shrugged anymore, so probably like a minute or so. You've been warned. if you don't want spoilers, you shouldn't still be here. So basically what's happening here is that the movers and shakers like Dagny, who are like starting new businesses and like creating new products and like looking to move the country forward, especially in industry, like with coal, with copper, with metal, they are disappearing like into thin air. Like no one even knows what happens to them. It looks like they've just retired. Like for no reason at all, they've given up, like, you know, this company is that they worked really hard for, or whatever product that they, or whatever new invention that they had in mind, like they just give it up for no reason. Like in the railroad, some of Dagny's most reliable men just quit their jobs and they don't even give any reason. They're just like, I'm not gonna work anymore. So this continues to happen. Like it continues to mount and build, and like Dagny is one of the few people left, and you're waiting and waiting and waiting to get some kind of answer to like what is happening here, who is John Galt, and finally it comes. But guys, it comes after 643 pages. It's like the tension is building, like the suspense is building that entire time, and like by the time I got to like page 643, I like practically threw the book across the room. I was like, really? That's longer than most normal books are. And like that's when like things actually start to kind of like start making sense. So yeah, I haven't even gotten very far past page 643. I am enjoying it. I think that she could have edited this down the way she edited Anthem down, but it is really good and I can't wait to finish it. A couple weeks ago, I posted a mini classics haul. If you haven't watched that, I'll make sure I link it up above or in the description below. I did get to quite a few of the books from that. The first one I read was Wildfire at Midnight. This is by Mary Stewart. Speaking of suspense, this is a more traditional murder mystery, but definitely like has that kind of tension, like Agatha Christie. This I did finish very, very quickly because like it just at the end of every chapter, she like drops some hint that makes you want to keep reading. Here's what the New York Times says on the back. The setting is the Isle of Skye, depicted with vivid wonder. There's another of Miss Stewart's captivatingly spirited heroines, and the story is rich in uncertainty, excitement, and sheer narrative flow. This heroine I didn't like quite as much as the heroine of Rose Cottage, which is the other Mary Stewart I've read. I did like her, but there kept being moments where I was like, why are you trusting that person? Like, why are you, like, you know there's a murderer on the loose. Shouldn't you be a little bit more careful here? But I did think the Isle of Skye was an absolutely gorgeous backdrop. I love this edition. Isn't it beautiful? Although I have to pick a beef with Book Depository because they still have the old covers listed on their website. The old cover and the new cover have the same ISBN. But when you order something online, you expect it to look like what was listed on the website. So it's like if they know that their warehouse is all out of the old cover, they should update the photo on the website. Luckily, both covers are beautiful, so you're going to win either way, but it does kind of bug me. This month was Victober on BookTube. I did not get to as many Victorian books as I meant to, but I did get to this one, which is an old favorite. I hadn't read it in a long time. Silas Marner by George Eliot. It was really fun to come back to it and like just remember everything I loved about it. This is just so well written. Like the whole story of it, I feel like is so well put together. All the characters, all the events, just the way it unfolds. It reminds me of a clock. Maybe that sounds silly to say, but it's just like all the little pieces are like little cogs and they fit together perfectly, and like the machinery of this book I think just works so well. Silas Marner is the main character. He is a weaver. He was bitterly disappointed as a young man and moved away from his hometown, and for years lived kind of as a hermit on the edge of this village. All he had to live for was his growing hoard of gold, but one day it's stolen. In his distress, he goes to the villagers, and so he gradually gets to know them, and you also gradually get to know them. They're just the best characters. And then a little girl shows up on his doorstep, and he takes her in, and that again kind of brings him back to life even more. I love the little girl. He names her Eppie, which I just think is the best name. Lots of really good writing, just a charming tale. Katie over at Books and Things is one of the booktubers who hosted Booktober, and she invited me to be in her Booktuber Victorian recommendations video, and Silas Marner was what I recommended. But it's such a fun video. If you haven't seen it, I'll link it down below. I'm not very far along in this book yet, but I'm really enjoying it so far. It's Kim by Rudyard Kipling, so this again is kind of Victorian. This is set in India, and Kim is actually a sahib. His parents were Irish, but his parents had both died, so now he's an orphan. He ends up teaming up with an old ascetic priest. I think he's a Buddhist, and they go off on this quest. They just reached this great road in India. Is it the Great Trunk? I can't remember the name of the Great Road, but they've just reached it, and I love the descriptions of like all the different people on the road, because Kim has never really been beyond his native city, so he's just kind of like drinking everything in, and I'm definitely excited to finish this one. I have a couple Kindle books that I read this month. One of them was The Gem Collector by P.G. Wodehouse. P.G. Wodehouse is always like relaxing and hilarious and just a great time. I'm not sure I'd say The Gem Collector is like one of his very best and fruitiest, but it definitely was enjoyable. It's about a veteran jewel thief who suddenly comes into his inheritance, and so he basically gives up thievery, but it's kind of still in his blood. So as he goes around and stays at all these country houses and sees these jewels around him, it's hard for him. It's full of Wodehouse's typical conundrums and misunderstandings, and it's just fabulous. The other two ebooks I've been reading are actually children's books. They are by Carol Watson Rankin. I've been reading Dandelion Cottage and The Girls of Highland Hall. The premise of Dandelion Cottage is just like certainly my dream as a little girl. Basically, in the town that these girls live in, there is an old beat up abandoned cottage. The roof is leaking, the wallpaper is peeling, like I think it's the church who owns it, and they can't rent it to anybody. And the girls end up offering to weed the dandelions out of the yard, and in return they become the renters of Dandelion Cottage. So they move in, they make it their playhouse, and it's so cute. Like they get all this like broken furniture from different people in the town, and like whenever they have callers or like they go to sit down in the drawing room, and the girls are like, oh no, that's only for play, like that's only like, you know, to look pretty, or for the doll to sit on. If anyone actually tried to sit on that chair, they would just fall on the ground because the legs aren't stable. Girls of Highland Hall follows the same characters when they go off to boarding school. They were both just adorable and charming. I always enjoy a good children's book, so I would definitely recommend them. That's about it from me. As always, I love to hear from you guys. Definitely post down in the comments below and tell me what you've been reading this month, what you've been enjoying. I'm always looking for new recommendations, and I feel like I've gotten so many awesome ones from you guys. Also, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. Make sure you're subscribed. I hope you're having a lovely day and a bookish day, and I'll talk to you guys again soon. Bye!